Welcome to Love Your Coaching. I'm Charlie, and today we're going to talk about what brings people to coaching. It's a fiddly question and an important one to answer, and I'm sure that every single coachee has unique reasons for coming to coaching. So we're going to try and tease out a few themes and see if we can have a really good understanding of this. If you're already coaching and you already have people you're working with, I'm sure this is a question you ask on an individual basis, don't you? You say, what's brought you to coaching? It's part of goal setting, part of finding out what topics that they want to talk about. So I'm wondering what you're noticing, what sort of patterns, what consistent things bring people to coaching. It'd be really interesting to hear about them. Perhaps put some comments below, let us know. I'm going to really try and myth bust a bit because I think that sometimes people think that the only people who come to coaching are people who are weak or people who are failing or people who have problems or people who have challenges or people who need therapy but don't want the stigma of therapy, those type of things. Coaching is definitely for people who are fine, people who are achieving well, people who have good things in their lives and in their work, but maybe they want to change something, maybe they want to talk through something. Coaching is not always about problems. It really isn't. And that's a really important starting point. So let's think about the main reasons. I think the first thing that I observe is there's lots of aspirational language that people use when they talk about coming to coaching. There's lots of these sort of big picture things, like people talk about empowerment, they talk about progress, they talk about development, and talk about change, those type of things. And these are big and useful words, and that they give a bit of a framing. And what I observe, I think, is that people tend to come to coaching around this topic of change. And probably under three different circumstances. Either they know an internal change is needed, there is an external change happening, or they don't know, but an internal change is bubbling away. I'm generalizing, but it seems to be around those three. So let's look at all of those. Firstly, people who know that a big change is happening is because something's gone on in their circumstance. Either they can see there's a change at work, a redundancy or a shift or a movement, a promotion, a change of manager, that type of thing. Or there's a change in life circumstances. Perhaps they are getting married, having a child, moving, um, parents aging, changing a relationship, those type of things. They can see that something needs to happen in their lives, so changes in the air. Sometimes it's an internal change that people are aware of. There's that vague sense that you need to do something. I'm sure we've all had it in a way at some point in time, whether we think, I need to change my job, or I need to get my career back on track, or I need to stop working so hard, or I need to look at what's working in some relationships and what's not working in others and think about a change. So the idea that actively people are ready to start talking about the change, and it gets presented, doesn't it, like quite early in the coaching, this is what I want to work on. So that's the second category. And the third one I'm mentioning is that change is in the air, but it's not necessarily in the unconscious, but it hasn't yet turned up in awareness. So maybe there's a more vague sense of dissatisfaction, or a vague sense of possibility, a vague sense of progress, something of that nature on the negative and the positive side. And that our potential coachee is going to, at some point in time in the coaching, have a realization that change is going to happen, that change is needed. So they're not necessarily coming in ready for change, but change starts emerging. So I would think that they're probably the main reasons that people come to coaching. But then the next question I want to address is, why are they coming to coaching to work on this? And the reason that I'm saying that and emphasizing coaching is because there's many other ways to move on in our lives and in our work than coaching, isn't there? If we think about it, we can just do our thinking ourselves, can't we? We can busily take notes, scribble in our journals, go and walk the dog, ponder it over, uh, those type of things. We can come up with our own ideas. We can talk to our nearest and dearest. Yes, it won't be the same as a coach because a coach gives you dedicated time, and it tends to be, doesn't it, in those partner relationships, it's a bit of to and fro and give and take. So we might not get that dedicated time, but we could certainly talk to our loved ones, our friends, our children, even. So that's a possibility. We could go and do some learning. We could read a book, we could do some training, we could develop the skill that we want to, especially if the topics that we're bringing to coaching are more of the practical, how do I dot, dot, dot type of thing. And of course, loads of people do those things alongside their coaching. Coaching isn't a massive intervention. It's not, you're not signing up for 100 hours. It's an hour, maybe an hour a month, 6 or 8 times, something like that. So it's not a huge amount of time. So probably those other activities are taking place as well. But nevertheless, there's something that draws people to work whatever they want to work out in coaching, as well as or instead of those other ways. And when I ask or when I listen to coaching sessions, I hear these type of things. Sometimes it's just on the very practical front. People are saying things like, I just know that if I talk it out loud, it will help me. Sometimes that they know that they need some thinking to be provoked. They say, I really need someone to be asking me those questions that are going to make me think. Sometimes I heard a session yesterday and it was just the fact that this person knew that they had the time in the hour that they in the diary that they couldn't get out of was the most useful thing. They knew they had to give themselves dedicated, focused time to the topic at hand. And so coaching locked into the diary. And that, for busy people in the 21st century, is incredibly important. So there are some of the reasons. I'm sure there are others, and I'm sure we can get into micro categories. But the idea, I think, for us as coaches to be able to really answer that question, if it gets asked of us, why do people come to coaching? To ask that question with confidence, to be able to ask our coaches, why coaching and why now and what makes this topic you want to talk about a coaching topic. So there's no evaluation, there's no judgment, and I'm not doing some massive survey here to try and find out, but it's good for all of us to pick up themes and to help understand why people bring themselves to coaching. So perhaps reflect on what's useful about what I've been sharing today, and perhaps reflect on your own experience. What have you seen? What do you notice? Perhaps if you've been coached as well, what brought you to coaching? What made you decide that coaching was the right thing for you? Be really interesting to hear. Please put some comments in the box below. That'd be great to hear. Enjoy your day. Enjoy talking to your coaches. Enjoy thinking about coaching. Happy coaching.